most of the time, if we get contacted by a couple where an affair has occurred, it's the partner that was cheated on asking us to help them understand if they should try to save the marriage, and if so, how. Particularly if the straying spouse is still out there somewhere. Is there some way to get him or her to come back to the marriage? But a certain number of the calls that we get are just the opposite. It's the spouse who did the cheating, who has now come to his or her senses and saying, wow, I really want to save the marriage, but my spouse either isn't sure he or she wants to, or they made up their mind. No, they can never forgive me for what I did. Is there any hope, if I'm the cheating spouse, for putting my marriage back together? Actually, there is. And we'll talk about that on this episode of Relationship Radio.
This is Relationship Radio, an extension of Marriage Helper International, hosted by renowned marriage and relationship expert Dr. Joe Beam and CEO of Marriage Helper, Kimberly Beam Holmes. We answer your questions directly with research-based principles that you can implement immediately. Regardless of the situation, what we teach will not only make your relationships better, but will also help you to become the best version of yourself along the way. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell to turn on notifications. Turn up the volume and prepare to take notes as we begin this week's episode of Relationship Radio.
There's a saying that once a cheater, always a cheater.
I've heard that.
Can't trust them. When all those things. But what we have seen in the work we've done at Marriage Helper, the couples we've worked with, is those aren't true. Sometimes it can be true.
Sometimes a cheater is always a cheater, but definitely not all of the time.
Definitely not all the time, and probably not even the majority of the time.
I think that's probably right. Not even the majority.
And so we believe, not just because we have seen it, but because, well, it is a lot because we have seen it, but also because of the research and work that we've done, that even a cheating spouse can come to their senses, come back to the marriage, and that a marriage can still be good, if not even better than it was before an affair occurred.
Yeah. And that's kind of counterintuitive to think that way. That, wait a minute, after a thing like being cheated on, the marriage can actually be stronger and better after that than it was before? Yes. But not because of the cheating, but because of what each person learned because of the cheating. So don't think, oh, well, in that case, I'll go out and cheat and make my marriage better. That's idiotic. It's a painful, terrible process to go through. It hurts quite a bit. But people can get past it. The person can be faithful for the rest of his or her life, and the marriage can be made good.
So it is a good thing if you are the person listening to this episode and have been the one who did the cheating. It's a good thing that you're listening to this, that you are coming to a place of saying, what can I do to put the marriage back together? The other side of it, though, is that there has been a spouse who has been cheated on, and ultimately it is their right to decide whether they want to reconcile or not. Now, we hope that they will come and give a listening ear to Marriage Helper, because we have a lot of great material and resources for that person to help them hopefully work towards wanting to reconcile the marriage, because, again, we believe that every marriage can be saved. But ultimately, it is their right.
Yeah, and if you try to push them to do it or guilt them to put the marriage back together, it's going to work against you.
Yep.
But sometimes we have that. We hear people saying, look, you're a Christian or whatever it might be, and because of your faith or because of the way you're brought up, because of the morals by which you live, you really have to forgive me and take me back and things will be okay. Now, if you use that kind of approach to put your marriage back together, I would say that the odds of you putting it back together are slim to none.
I would agree. It's going to push them even further away.
Exactly. And so if you're truly sorry for what you did, truly penitent, is it possible to put marriage back together? And the answer is yes. We have actually worked with thousands, and I'm not exaggerating with that number, thousands of couples where one has cheated, they put the marriage back together, and the marriage is better off today than it was before. So that can happen for you. Obviously, the affair has to stop.
Right.
And obviously, if your spouse is going to forgive you, you have to own up to what you did. And if they decide to forgive you, then you still have to be patient about working through the process of putting the marriage back together. Don't imagine it's going to instantaneously heal. Okay. Well, we got some questions about that. And first one's from a wife, so one of our staff members will read that for us, and then we'll talk about that question.
Hey, you guys. My name is Caroline, and I work on the marketing team here at Marriage Helper. In my role, I typically work on email and our website to get people the resources they need. Dr. Beam and Kimberly have asked me to read a question that was submitted to us by one of our listeners. This person asks, "My husband cheated on me and now he tells me that he wants to save our marriage, and I want that too. But with the pain in my heart, I don't know how I'll ever heal. I also want him to fully disclose everything about the affair. Is it a good idea?"
It is a great sign that your husband is wanting to save the marriage. It's an even better sign that you want to as well. And we completely understand the pain that you have dealt with, what you're feeling now, because it is a loss for both of you, but especially for you, the wife asking this question. You have lost an expectation of what you thought your marriage would be, a loss of trust, perhaps, of course, in what your husband has done. And so accept the pain. Don't try and push it down or say, I shouldn't feel this way because my husband's wanting to work on it and because it's ended. Allow yourself to mourn the loss that you've had. And remember that the pain can heal. It just takes time to do so. Your marriage can heal, but it takes doing the right things to do so in order for the relationship to be stronger than ever before. So realize you're not alone. The pain doesn't mean that you shouldn't move back towards reconciling or putting your marriage back together. It's simply a signal that you went through something hard and painful, and therefore you need to give yourself some grace in that.
Now, often pain leads to anger, and so it may be that you want to lash out against your spouse because of what he or she did. And to some degree, we understand that. Well, as a matter of fact, to a great degree, we understand that. I mean, you're hurt, that causes anger. Anger tends to lash out at other people. But in the healing process, that will happen some. But if you continually lash out at your spouse who cheated, who wants to put things back together, at some point he or she will give up. It'll be like, I can't do this. I mean, I hurt you so badly, as this lady said, I don't think I'll ever get over it. I've hurt you so badly, I don't think you'll ever get over it. And therefore, maybe I should just go on my way and do something else because you're never going to truly forgive me. So while it's okay to feel the pain and to allow yourself to mourn that loss, and it's okay to be angry, if you take that anger out in great ways on your spouse, you probably are not going to put it back together. And you say, well, it's my right. It's absolutely your right. If that's what you choose to do, you can do that. But if you want to have any hope of putting it back together, and we often ask people this question, the spouse who did this, is your spouse a good person who did a bad thing or a bad person who did a bad thing? Because if you're convinced that your spouse is just a bad person, well, probably nothing's going to work to put it back together because bad people keep doing bad things. But most people are good people. And good people can do some really crappy stuff. Good people can do some really painful things. And if you decide your spouse is good people, then that could be part of your decision about how we put it back together. Now, Kimberly, she says, I want to know everything about the affair. Is that a good idea?
Absolutely not.
And why is that not a good idea?
Terrible idea. Because of many reasons. The first of which is, even if you know every detail, it's not going to help you heal. It's not going to help you move on. I think that's the false preconceived notion people have. Well, if I can just fully understand, then I'll move on. But no, it's going to make it worse. You're going to have pictures in your head that aren't going to be actually what happened. And it's going to probably lead you to resent your husband even more for what he did. So we do not advise it as a wise thing to do.
Right. Actually, it's just going to cause more pain. Now, sometimes people, Kimberly, say, well, wait a minute, I'm imagining it already. But there's a difference between you conjuring it up and your spouse conjuring it up by telling you about it. A great difference. Because as long as it's only your imagination, you know that. Okay, I'm picturing all these terrible things. But if he, in this case it's a he, says, no, I really did this and I did that, now it's more concrete. And again, like Kimberly said, the vision you have is not of what actually happened. It's still your imagination, but it's an imagination that takes on reality because your spouse confessed, yes, I did that. And it's going to take you so much longer to heal. So we're not saying you don't ask because you're trying to help your spouse get away with something. We don't believe in helping anybody get away with anything. We're saying you don't ask because of the pain it's going to cause you, pain that you don't need to go through. Now, Kimberly, not long ago, one of my friends who's very analytical said, but you don't understand, Joe, I have to have all the details. So he got all the details. And now he can't get over the fact that he knows a specific thing his wife did with her lover back when she was in the affair that she didn't do with him. And he's resenting that. And I'm saying, and I actually said to him, I told you not to ask. And if you hadn't asked, you wouldn't be having this problem.
Right.
And so thinking you need all the details, you're just making it more difficult. And so we would recommend against that. Now, in a situation like this, he does have to earn their trust again, right?
Right. And that could be another part of it. So another reason someone would want to hear everything is because I want him to tell me the truth. I want to get the truth out there. I want to know I can trust him. But there's other ways to build trust without hearing the truth of what happened.
Well, still hearing truth, but not the details.
Right. Yeah. I mean, clarify the difference between that.
Okay. So when Alice and I were getting back together, she had questions. And here, she didn't ask anything that called for details. So, for example, and I'm going to use the mildest verb I can put here. If she had said, did you kiss her? Well, if I say, yes, I did, now she has a mental image of that. But if she says, did you have an affair with her? Well, yeah, that's a broad truth. Yes, I did. Did you leave me for her? Yes, I did. And so she got enough information to know that I wasn't hiding anything from her. But she didn't have to get the nitty-gritty details where her mind would focus in on, oh, man, that hurts so badly. So we made the deal. I'll tell you the truth about everything if you really want to know. And sometimes she'd ask a question. I said, do you really want to know the answer to that? And she'd go, no. But if ever I do, will you tell me? Yes, I will. So you tell the truth to rebuild trust, but you ask not to share details that create a visual.
Right. And we talk about this. I mean, one of the sections of our couples workshop that we do really can help couples learn what needs to happen in order to rebuild trust and accountability on both parts. And so I would recommend, I mean, this woman already said both of us are wanting to work on the marriage. I would recommend that they get to our workshop as quickly as possible. Because
we'll help you understand how the affair happened. We're not going to help you understand everything that occurred, like each act, each detail. But we'll help you understand how it happened, what led to this occurring. We can help you understand how to forgive and get past it. And we can help you understand how you can heal from that pain, which is going to take a while. But you can heal. And not only that, can have a good marriage in the future. And so in a situation where you say, I don't think I can ever get past the hurt, we certainly understand. But we fully believe we can help you do that. And since he wants to come back, don't just try to move in together and think that's going to fix everything. There's some things you need to understand, some things you need to do, some things you need not to do. And that's why we recommend our workshop, because we can explain all that to you over 3 days. And they found out about the workshop?
marriagehelper.com, and then click the workshops tab at the top of the screen.
Yeah, very good. It seems like by now I would know that.
I guess you've never had to go looking for our workshops online.
Well, I haven't needed it lately, so I'm doing okay. I still teach some of the workshops, and I enjoy doing that. Well, we have another question here, this time from a husband, and one of our staff members will read this for you.
Hey guys, my name is Jordan, and I'm on the client rep team at Marriage Helper. In my role, I typically help guide you to the very best resources that we have that can improve your marriage. Dr. Beam and Kimberly have asked me to read a couple questions that you all have submitted. This first person asks, my wife and I have been married almost 10 years. I have had multiple emotional cheating incidents throughout. The last one my wife found out about, and now she wants a divorce. But I don't. We do talk and we live in the same home, but I'm lost. What can I do to rebuild our love and relationship?
We actually had a podcast episode. I mean, at this point, it was several months ago, but it was an interview testimonial with a man who had come through our Solo Spouse workshop. His name is Steven. So people can go back. We'll have it referenced in our show notes, but he had actually had 5 extramarital affairs. And it was a similar situation to this man. That's why I thought of it. And in the interview that he did with Gemma on our team to do the podcast interview, he talked about how he realized he had felt so much shame about what he had done. He didn't want his wife to find out. And he said he would just have nights where he would sleep in the bed next to her and just said, maybe if I just like whisper it to her in her sleep, that it will alleviate me of my guilt and she'll find out that way. And then it'll be out in the open and we can deal with it. And he was just struggling with how to deal with this. Well, ultimately she did find out about the last one. And then either he told her, I can't remember the specifics. She found out about all of them, and things did not go well.
Yeah.
However, he came to our solo spouse workshop and he really began to understand about himself, about maybe things in his life that had led to the temptation and availability of getting into those affairs. And so he talks about how beneficial and just life-changing the solo spouse workshop was for him.
Because he began to understand why.
He began to understand why he had those affairs and what he could do to protect himself from it moving forward.
Would you say then that for this particular guy, that's crucial, that he has to understand why he's been having these emotional affairs?
Absolutely. Because otherwise they will probably continue happening. Because there has been multiple emotional cheating incidents throughout the last 10 years, that's not incredibly typical. That's more on the atypical side of behavior when it comes to cheating. And so it's important to understand why. What is it that's going on? Is there some kind of, you would know more about this part than I do, but is there some kind of a addictive personality style that's leading to engaging consistently in these affairs?
Yeah, it can be any number of reasons. There was a guy that when I did a live call-in radio program for a few years, there was a guy that called me every once in a while. And the reason that he did is because his dad taught him that you can't trust women. They're all bad. So just use them. And so he actually lived that lifestyle because his father taught him to do so. To this guy, what we're saying is this. We don't know why you've done this,
right,
but there's a reason. And it probably comes out of childhood, believe it or not. And if you can't find out what this thing is, then why should she trust you? Why should your wife trust you if you don't find the cause of what's causing these things and then find the way to heal it? Otherwise, she's like, well, you've done all these other things. Now you say you want to put the marriage back together. We're all going to be just fine. Well, heck, I thought we were just fine for 10 years.
Yeah.
And then discover you've been doing all these things. And so you will have to get the help to find out what's happening with you. Now, interestingly, Kimberly, in the Solo Spouse Workshop, we've often had people come to that realization. We don't do therapy there. We don't do counseling. It's an educational process, but it's an educational process designed to help people learn not only about relationships, but to learn a whole lot about themselves. And you can see it when the lights go off like, oh, that's why I do that. And it's really kind of interesting to me how that just that knowledge can be so powerful, like toward healing the thing. You would think, okay, then they'll know, but it's still going to be a long road to heal it. But somehow the knowing this is why that's happening can propel them forward in the healing.
I agree. That's why they say knowledge is power. I mean, there really is, when you can start connecting the dots, I think there's part of it where you realize you're not crazy or you're not, abnormal, that you're just, you are a normal person, so to say.
Even when you're doing terrible things.
Right. And that there's hope for a path forward. So it helps them understand the past, but also propels them of what they can do to move forward to prevent it from happening again.
Right. A couple of things I think that set us apart, Kimberly, is that, well, there are several, but one has to do with the fact that we take very complex psychological principles when we're teaching our workshops and seminars and make them easy to understand. And that's not because we think people are dumb. It's because usually the way these things are phrased are so complicated in the way they phrase them that it's hard to really comprehend what they're saying.
Right.
So we love taking these complex psychological principles, making them very simple, because when they're made simple, people can then start understanding the nuances better. And then another thing we do is we provide a path forward. Okay, based on that, here's what you can do. Now, to this gentleman, we would say, you can't put this back together by trying to force her to love you again. Mm-hmm. That won't happen. This guy's going to have a lot of patience. He needs to find out, and you probably will have to find this out before you ever get back together. In other words, he might be able to get her to come to the couples workshop with him, and if so, we would recommend that right off the bat. But the fact that he's done this over 10 years, she's probably, and we're guessing, to the point where it's like, I don't know if I want to do anything. And we would say, come to the Solo Spouse Workshop so you can learn about you. Now, when you do that, then you'll start finding, okay, not only this is why, but what's my path forward? But then you'll have to consistently and patiently live that. She's not going to trust you just like that. Not going to happen. And at some point, Kimberly, don't you think she's going to need to understand why it happened?
Yes, I do, to help with the same reasons, for her to understand the past, and also if there's an opportunity to see a path forward, that will help her see the path forward. To see her husband as someone who's not just an evil man, but as someone who there was not a justified reason, but there was a reason that led to what happened here.
Good point. It doesn't justify it, but you can help. Understanding why something happens goes a long way toward preventing it from happening again. And it's not looking for justification. It's just looking for comprehension. And so sometimes, Kimberly, we have people come to the solo workshop like we think that I probably should. And then later they actually come back through the couples workshop. And we offer great discounts for that if they do it that way. So that it's actually the deal of the century. And they can come back through there, and then she can understand.
Right.
So you would say that even if a guy's had 10 emotional affairs, I'm assuming one a year, even if he's had 10 emotional affairs, the marriage can be salvaged and made good again?
I believe it can. You have to do the work, but it can.
Yeah, it's not magic.
It's not magic.
So Kimberly, what are the key takeaways for today?
The first is that affairs cause great pain that needs to be healed from. Number 2, it is possible to overcome the pain and to be happy again. Number 3, you must have an understanding of why and a path forward to recreate that deep love. And we can help you do that by what we do at Marriage Helper. We believe that there is always hope.
And we have worked with thousands, and that's not an exaggeration, thousands and thousands of couples. We'd like to help you if we possibly can. We really do. And so they go to Marriage Helper, that's marriagehelper.com. There are different tabs they can click about courses and seminars and workshops and all that kind of thing. Well, Kimberly, I think we're wrapping up this season of Relationship Radio, and we will hopefully see everybody in the next season of Relationship Radio. And Kimberly and I will see you before long.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Relationship Radio. Please refer to the notes in the description to learn more about any resources mentioned in this episode. Please visit our website at marriagehelper.com for more information about our online courses, marriage workshops, and coaching. We exist to help save marriages and strengthen families. We look forward to interacting with you on the next episode of Relationship Radio.